I gave my daughter a cafe to secure her future, but her mother-in-law stole it and forced her into unpaid labor. They thought an old man was an easy target, but they forgot I spent 35 years as a health inspector. Time for a lesson in justice. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. I put every cent of my retirement into that cafe, but seeing my daughter on her knees scrubbing grout with a toothbrush made it feel like I'd paid for her prison cell. The bells above Morning Brew jingled with a sharp, mocking, cheerful tone as I stepped through the glass door. The air inside didn't smell like the rich, nutty espresso I'd picked out for Delphine 3 months ago. It smelled like burnt grounds and something sour, like milk left out too long in the sun. Then I saw her. My daughter Delphine was huddled in the bathroom doorway, her face red and wet with tears. She didn't see me at first because she was too busy trying to clean tile grout with a tiny brush while her mother-in-law watched from the counter like a hawk on a branch. "Delphine, you missed a spot," a voice called out. It was sharp and sweet, like a mouthful of artificial sweetener that leaves a bitter aftertaste. Ora Foster sat at the cash register like it was a throne. She had silver hair that looked like spun wire and designer glasses hanging on a silver chain. She was wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than the espresso machine. Ora was my daughter's mother-in-law, the woman who was currently treating the owner of the shop like an unpaid janitor. This was the business I bought for Delphine with $85,000 of my own money. Every penny I had from 35 years of working as a health inspector went into those four walls so my daughter could have a dream. Now, it looked like a nightmare. Delphine's head jerked up and her eyes went wide when she saw me. "Dad," she whispered. Her voice cracked and she dropped the toothbrush. It clattered on the tile floor with a sound that made my teeth ache. Ora didn't miss a beat. Her smile was wide enough to sell insurance to a sinking ship. "Lemuel, what a lovely surprise," she said. "We weren't expecting you." She emphasized the word we like she was the one who belonged there. I didn't smile back. My jaw was so tight I thought my molars might snap. "I came to see my daughter," I said. I walked past the counter, stepping over a bucket of gray water to reach Delphine. "And her cafe," Ora added, tilting her head. "Our cafe, dear. Delphine and I are partners now. Didn't she tell you?" The word partners sat in my chest like a piece of spoiled meat. I spent 3.5 decades walking into kitchens and knowing exactly when something was rotting. Right now, the stench of a scam was filling my nostrils. I looked over at the corner table and saw Travis, Delphine's husband. He was staring at a laptop with his headphones on, pretending he couldn't hear his wife crying 5 feet away. He shifted in his seat, but didn't look up. He was Ora's son, and it was clear whose side he was on. "Let me help you, honey," I said, reaching down to take the rag from Delphine's hand. "Oh no," Ora said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. She needs to understand proper cleaning standards. The health inspector was very clear last month. My hand stopped in midair. "What health inspector?" I asked. Ora waved a hand dismissively. "Just routine. Delphine had a few oversights, but we fixed everything." Her smile grew wider, showing too many teeth. "Oh, you'd know about that, wouldn't you? Your old profession." The coffee machine hissed behind her, a cloud of steam rising up like a warning signal. I counted to 5, trying to keep my hands from shaking. "Travis," I called out, "how's work treating you?" My son-in-law barely looked up. "Fine, Dad," he said. "Busy." Ora answered for him before he could say another word. "He's been such a help here, managing the finances and dealing with the suppliers. Someone needs to handle the serious work." "I can handle it," Delphine started to say, but Ora cut her off with a voice dripping in honeyed poison. "Sweetheart, we've discussed this. Stick to what you're good at." The baking. Delphine's hands curled into fists, and she turned back to the table, wiping it in fast, desperate circles. I ordered a coffee from Ora, not for my daughter. I had to see how she was running the place. She poured it with theatrical precision, acting like she was a master barista instead of a thief in a suit. "Tell me what you think of our blend," she said. "I've made some improvements to the sourcing." Every time she said our or we, it felt like a tiny knife twisting in my ribs. I took a sip. The coffee was weak, bitter, and served at the wrong temperature. I'd shut down restaurants for less than the mess I was looking at. Delicious, I lied. My hand shook when I raised the cup, and a bit of coffee sloshed over the rim, spilling onto the counter. Aura's eyes tracked the spill like a predator watching a wounded animal. Satisfaction flickered in her expression. She pulled a towel from under the counter and wiped the spill with exaggerated care. "No worries, Lemuel," she said. "Accidents happen." I wanted to grab that towel and throw it in her face. I had to take a deep breath and count to 10 this time. An older woman at the window table stood up and left without finishing her drink. The bell jangled behind her, leaving the shop quiet except for the hum of the refrigerators. "I'd love to see the partnership papers," I said, keeping my voice steady and casual. Aura laughed, a dry sound that didn't reach her eyes. "Business documents are so boring, Lemuel. Travis handles all that legal stuff. Isn't that right, honey?" Travis nodded once, his eyes still glued to his screen. I knew that look. For 35 years, I'd watched restaurant owners lie and squirm. I knew what guilt looked like, and I knew what deception felt like. I was looking at both of them right now. I set my cup down on the counter with a hard click. "I should let you ladies get back to work," I said. "Oh, we're always working," Aura beamed. "Running a successful business takes constant attention, but that's what family does, right? We support each other." I looked at Delphine. She was standing at a far table, staring at nothing with the rag still in her hand. "Right?" I asked, but no one answered. The bells jangled again as I walked out into the Portland rain. My ears were ringing so loud I could barely hear the traffic. I drove home with my hands tight on the wheel, my mind racing through every health code and legal trick I knew. Around 7 that night, my doorbell rang. Delphine stood in my apartment hallway, her eyes red and swollen. She walked in without speaking and sat on my couch, pulling her knees to her chest like a frightened child. "I told her I was picking up supplies," she whispered. I sat beside her and waited. I didn't push. I knew the dam was about to break. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she sobbed, the tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want to tell you. I was ashamed." "Ashamed of what?" I asked softly. She looked at me, her face pale. "She said she'd help with the startup costs, said it was a family investment. She made it sound so generous." The words tumbled out of her fast and desperate. Then came the papers. "There was so much legal language," Delphine said. "Travis told me it was all normal. He promised it was just to protect everyone." My chest tightened until it was hard to breathe. "Let me see them," I said. Delphine pulled a folder from her bag with shaking hands. I opened it and started reading. Page 1 looked like a standard partnership agreement. Page 3 made my stomach turn. By the time I got to page 7, I felt like I was going to be sick. Aura owned 51% of the business. Delphine started sobbing again, her head in her hands. "The lawyer said I can't forget what the lawyer said," she cried. My voice came out cold and flat, a sound I hadn't used since I retired. "I'll fix this," I said. "Dad, she's got money and connections," Delphine whispered. "And I have 35 years of closing down people who think they're above the rules," I told her. I took her hands and made her look at me. I squeezed her fingers until she stopped shaking. "I'm going to fix this fast, and I'm going to make sure she never sees it coming." Delphine left my apartment after 10, sneaking back to her own life like a teenager breaking a curfew. I sat in the dark for a long time, staring at the partnership documents on my coffee table. 51 pages of legal theft. My eyes drifted to a shelf where I kept a few mementos from my career. Tucked between some vintage sanitation posters was a small leather wallet. I hadn't opened it in 3 years. My hand reached for it almost by itself. Inside was my old ID badge from the Oregon Health Authority, Senior Health Inspector. The photo showed a younger version of me, but the eyes were the same. Those were the same eyes that had shut down 43 restaurants in my career. I ran my thumb over the embossed seal of the state. A smile crept across my face, but it wasn't a nice one. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep much. Habit kicked in at 6 a.m. sharp. I showered and dressed carefully in khakis and a button-down shirt, comfortable shoes, inspector casual. My reflection showed a man with a plan, someone very different from the shocked father who had seen his daughter crying the day before. The cafe opened at 7, and I pulled into the parking lot at 7:30. Delphine was behind the counter alone, and she jumped when the bell rang. Dark circles hung under her eyes. "Dad, what are you doing here?" she asked. "Black coffee, please," I said, speaking loud enough for the two other customers to hear. "And one of those cinnamon rolls." Her eyes flickered with understanding. She got the message. "One coffee, one roll," she said, her voice steadier than yesterday. I took a corner table and unfolded a newspaper, but I wasn't reading the headlines. I was performing a top-down inspection of the entire operation. The refrigerator door hung open for 30 seconds while Delphine grabbed milk. Temperature abuse, red flag. There was no thermometer visible on the outside of the unit, another violation. I watched as she handled dairy products right next to where she had been cutting vegetables. Cross-contamination risk. I looked at the containers on the shelf. No date stickers. That was a direct violation of Oregon Administrative Rule 333. Then I saw her phone sitting right on the prep counter. Contamination vector. In 10 minutes, I had already cited 5 major violations in my head. I'd done this for 35 years. I saw health code violations the way a carpenter sees load-bearing walls. It was automatic and unavoidable. Lemuel becoming a regular already. Aura appeared from the back, her face perfectly made up even this early. She pulled out the chair across from me and sat down without being invited. "See," I told Delphine, "good coffee sells itself." I sipped the drink. It was still weak and still the wrong temperature. "New systems?" I asked. "Oh, absolutely." Aura leaned forward, eager to brag. "I've implemented several efficiency measures to reduce waste and optimize inventory." She told me about how she'd switched to a generic brand of dairy because it was half the price. "Customers can't tell the difference," she said, her eyes glittering with greed. Optimization was just corporate speak for being cheap. I'd shut down a restaurant once for serving expired milk, and it looked like Aura viewed expiration dates as just another suggestion. "Smart," I said, nodding. "Travis and I have been reviewing every expense line," she continued. "He's got such a head for numbers." Travis arrived then, nodding at me before slinking to his usual corner to hide behind his laptop. The morning rush started, and the place filled up with 5 customers. Delphine moved as fast as she could between the counter and the tables. Aura stayed planted at the register, taking the money and doing nothing else. "No, no, no," Aura's voice suddenly cut through the room. She marched over to where Delphine was wiping a table. "Watch," she said, grabbing the cloth from my daughter's hand. She started demonstrating slow, deliberate circular motions like she was teaching a toddler. "See? No streaks. It's not complicated." Delphine whispered that she was doing it that way, but Aura wasn't listening. "3 customers mentioned streaky tables yesterday," Aura said loudly. "Do you know what that does to our reputation?" 2 people at nearby tables shifted in their seats, looking uncomfortable. Travis looked up for a second, then went back to his screen. I stood up. "Could I use the bathroom?" I asked. "Of course," Aura beamed. "Down the hall. We keep everything very clean. Lemuel would approve, wouldn't you? Given your background." I walked past the counter and got a perfect view of the kitchen pass-through. Cleaning chemicals were stored on a shelf right next to the dry goods. Violation. The mop sink was way too close to the hand-washing sink. Another violation. I pulled out my phone and took 3 quick photos. The bathroom itself was clean, probably because Delphine had spent all night on her knees, but the hand-washing station had a crack in the porcelain basin. Minor, but still sittable. I took 4 more photos. When I came back, Aura had actually taken my seat. She was sitting in my chair looking through my newspaper. "You know what section I love?" she asked. "Business. I read it every morning. Delphine never reads it. No head for business, that girl." Aura let the silence finish her sentence, implying my daughter was useless. I pulled out my wallet and left a $20 bill on the table. The coffee and roll were maybe $6. "Keep the change, Delphine," I called out. Aura's hand shot out and snatched the bill before Delphine could even move. She pocketed it while smiling at me. "How generous," she said. "We'll put it toward new equipment. The espresso machine needs repairs." Delphine stood by the counter, her face pale. I left without looking back. I had work to do. I went home and opened my laptop. I spent 3 hours reviewing the Oregon administrative rules. The code I had memorized decades ago hadn't changed much. My notebook was filling up with a list of failures. Temperature control, cross-contamination, improper labeling, chemical storage. Individually, they were small. Together, they were a disaster. Around 6 p.m., I called an old friend named Dewey. He'd spent 40 years in the health authority. We'd trained together and closed down more than a few dirty kitchens in our time. He picked up on the third ring and laughed when he heard my voice. Lemuel Patterson, 3 years retired and suddenly calling about code violations, Dewey said. What's the occasion? I leaned back in my chair and looked at the notes I'd made. Small cafe, new ownership. Several serious violations, I told him. I walked him through what I'd seen. His tone shifted and became professional. That's 3 citable offenses right there, he said. How bad? Bad enough, I replied. But the owner is confident. She thinks the rules don't apply to her. Dewey's laugh barked through the phone. The confident ones are always my favorite. We talked for an hour about the old days. Dewey told me the department was different now, filled with younger guys who didn't have the instinct for when something was wrong. I pulled open my old filing cabinet. It was full of contacts, people who owed me favors and people I'd trained. My finger traced down the pages until I found the names I needed. Dewey, I said softly, someone is about to get a refresher course on the law. It's time to see if Ora Foster really understands what business optimization means. Welcome to my world, Ora. 2 days after I made that call, I was sitting at my kitchen table surrounded by piles of paper. It wasn't just any paper. It was 35 years of accumulated knowledge, printouts of every regulation, complaint templates, and inspection protocols. My coffee was cold, but I didn't care. I opened the Oregon Health Authority website and found the official complaint portal. I didn't just fill it out, I crafted it like a masterpiece. I used every trigger phrase I knew would get a response. Multiple violations observed, temperature abuse of hazardous foods, concerns from vulnerable populations. I'd written thousands of these reports in my career, but this one was personal. I had a yellow legal pad next to my laptop with 4 stages outlined in my cramped handwriting. Stage 1 was the health inspection. Stage 2 was social reputation damage. Stage 3 was legal action, and Stage 4 was financial consequences. I was ready to pull the trigger on Stage 1. I opened a burner phone app and dialed Delphine's number. "Are you alone?" I asked when she picked up. She told me Travis was at his mother's house. "Listen carefully," I said. "Tomorrow when you close, I need you to forget a few things." "Don't replace the date labels on the dairy," I told her. "And that temperature log by the walk-in fridge, maybe you're just too tired to fill it in." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You're setting her up," Delphine whispered. "I'm letting the truth show itself," I told her. "Will you help me?" Her voice was a barely audible yes. "Truth," I said. "Day after tomorrow, mid-morning. You'll know when." I hung up and stared at the submit button on the screen. Once I clicked this, I was using my professional life to target my own daughter's business, but I remembered her on her knees crying, and I clicked submit. I'd driven to a Starbucks blocks away at 3 in the morning to do it. I was paranoid about IP addresses and timestamps. When I got home, I had a confirmation email with a reference number. Stage 1 was in motion. Late that afternoon, Dewey called me. "Lem, you manipulative bastard," he laughed. "You wrote this like a textbook example. You hit every red flag we have. Vulnerable populations is code red for the department. I told him I'd mentioned the elderly and children on purpose. It makes it an automatic priority response," Dewey said. "It's already been flagged and assigned to a team. He told me it should happen within 48 hours. He was monitoring it personally to make sure everything stayed by the book." But then his voice softened. "Lem, stay away from the scene when it happens," he warned. "You can't be anywhere near that shop. If there's any connection between you and the inspection, Ora will ask questions." I promised him I'd stay away, even though I knew I wouldn't. I spent the evening on the next part of my plan. I pulled up the Google review page for Morning Brew. 43 reviews with an average of 4 stars. Most were positive. It was time to change that. I created a new account under the name Philip Henderson. I used a random name generator and a stock photo of a middle-aged guy in a blue shirt. He looked like a concerned citizen, but he was absolute fiction. I wrote a one-star review. Disappointed by the lack of attention to sanitation standards, I wrote, "Observed concerning practices during a recent visit. Hope management takes safety seriously." I hovered over the post button. Was I overthinking it? No. I clicked post. The review appeared instantly. 2 strategic strikes in one day. I'd never enjoyed filing a report this much in my entire life. My laptop chimed with a video call from my son, Fletcher. He was in his apartment in Berlin, looking at me through the screen. "Dad, you look different," he said. Focused. "I'm fixing what needs fixing," I told him. He asked if Delphine knew the whole plan. "She knows enough," I said. Fletcher leaned closer to the camera and told me he was transferring $5,000 to my account. "Don't argue," he said. "You spent your retirement on her dream. Let me help protect it." My throat tightened. "You're a good son, Fletcher," I whispered. "Now go get her," he said with a fierce smile. I sat in the dark after we hung up. Fletcher's support made this feel less like revenge and more like justice. My phone buzzed after midnight. It was Dewey again. "It's done," he said. "No preamble. Day after tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'm sending Martinez and Chen. They're the best we have. Thorough, fair, and completely by the book. They'll find everything that's findable." I tried to thank him, but he cut me off. "I didn't do anything except let the system work," he said. "You wrote a perfect complaint. Just stay away from that shop, Lem. You hear me?" I listened to the rain against my window and thought about the next 48 hours. Aura Foster was about to learn what 30 years of experience looked like when it was aimed at her. My phone glowed with a notification. Someone had replied to the Philip Henderson review. It was Aura, using her verified business account. "We take all concerns seriously and would appreciate the opportunity to discuss your experience," she wrote. "We pride ourselves on exceeding all standards." It was professional, but underneath it felt like a threat. "I'm watching you," it seemed to say. I smiled. Let her watch. I had bigger problems coming for her. The next 2 days crawled by like wounded animals. I cleaned my apartment twice and reorganized all my old files just to burn time. The morning of the inspection, I woke up at 5. I couldn't help it. By 9:30, I had already violated Dewey's instructions. I was sitting in a small cafe across the street from Morning Brew. I had a perfect view through the windows. I ordered a cappuccino and made myself comfortable. I asked the barista what temperature they kept their milk at. She laughed and said 40 degrees because her manager was obsessed with the thermometer. Good manager, I thought. At 10 a.m. sharp, a white Oregon Health Authority sedan pulled up. 2 inspectors stepped out. Martinez had a clipboard and Chen had a digital thermometer on his belt. Through the front window of Morning Brew, I watched Aura's expression shift. She went from a welcoming smile to confusion and then concern. Martinez showed her badge, and I could almost hear the words, "Routine inspection." Aura's smile got even bigger. She thought it was just a formality, but Martinez didn't smile back. Chen moved toward the kitchen, and Aura tried to redirect him, but he ignored her. Professionals never let the owner control the route. I took a sip of my coffee. This was what justice tasted like. It tasted like properly steamed milk and other people's panic. Martinez was spreading out at the counter, checking temperatures and opening every container. Chen disappeared into the back. Delphine stood frozen by the espresso machine, and Travis was in the corner, trying to be invisible. 40 minutes later, the inspectors emerged. Even from across the street, I could see that Aura had gone pale. She was talking fast, gesturing wildly, and pointing at Delphine. She was trying to blame my daughter for everything. Martinez's face stayed flat as concrete. I'd trained her well. You never react to the show. You just write up the violations. Through the window, I watched Aura's performance go from concerned owner to demanding to speak to a manager, and finally, to full nuclear meltdown. Martinez handed her the yellow copies of the official forms. Aura snatched them and started reading. Her face transformed into pure rage. She wheeled around and started screaming at Delphine. 2 customers grabbed their coats and ran out the door. Travis pulled off his headphones but did nothing. He was a coward. I finished my drink, left some cash on the table, and walked to my car. I was home in 20 minutes, my hands still shaking on the wheel. Stage 1 was complete. That afternoon, my burner app rang. It was Delphine. "Dad, I can't talk," she whispered. I heard Aura's voice in the background screaming about who she was calling. The call disconnected. I texted her that she had done perfectly and to stay strong. An hour later, she replied. "She's blaming me for everything," Delphine wrote. "She says I ruined the business. Travis won't defend me." "Dad, I'm scared." I poured a glass of whiskey and drank it neat. Fletcher called around 6, and I told him the result: a $2,500 fine and a written warning. A follow-up inspection was scheduled for 30 days. "That's huge," Fletcher said. "Dad, you did it." I told him it might have worked too well. Aura was smart, and she was going to start asking questions. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered, and Aura's voice came through like ice. "Lemuel," she said. "Not Lem. We need to talk." My stomach dropped into my shoes. "Aura, what can I do for you?" I asked. "Don't play innocent," she snapped. "It's insulting to both of us. The inspection, the Google review, the timing. You think I'm stupid?" I tried to play dumb, but she cut me off. "Philip Henderson," she said. "Ring a bell?" My mouth went dry. "Philip Henderson doesn't exist," she continued, "but his IP address does. Want to guess whose address that is?" Silence filled the line. "We need to talk face to face," Aura said. "Tonight, or I go to the police with harassment evidence tomorrow morning. Your choice. My apartment in 1 hour." She hung up, and I sat on my couch with the phone still warm in my hand. For the first time in 40 years, I felt real, concrete fear. Aura had evidence and a lawyer. She could frame this as stalking or interference with a business. My own Google review was proof that I had targeted her. I was 70 years old with no savings, living on Social Security. One lawsuit could wipe me out completely. My hand shook as I poured another drink. Then a text came from Delphine. "Dad, she knows you helped me. She's coming for you. I'm so sorry. This is my fault." I read that text 3 times. No, I thought. I put the glass down so hard it cracked. This was Aura's fault. She had stolen from my daughter and humiliated her. She had turned a dream into a nightmare. I didn't start this war, but I wasn't going to lose it. I had 20 minutes until she arrived. I paced the floor, wearing a path in my carpet. I pulled out the partnership documents again. 51 pages of theft. My phone buzzed with another text. "I'm parking," Aura wrote. "Bring coffee. This will take a while." The audacity of the woman was incredible. I didn't make any coffee. The knock came exactly 1 hour after her call. 3 firm official knocks. I opened the door. Aura was standing there in a cream-colored suit and pearls like she was going to a board meeting. Her hair was perfect, and her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Behind her was a man in his 50s in a gray suit carrying a leather briefcase. "Mr. Patterson, I'm Richard Donovan, Aura's attorney," he said. "Thank you for meeting with us." I stepped back and let them in, even though I hadn't agreed to anything. "You threatened me," I said. "I'm curious why." Aura swept past me, scanning my apartment like she was checking the property value. The lawyer followed her and set his briefcase on my coffee table, the same table where I'd planned the whole thing. "Lemuel, let's stop playing games," Aura said, her smile disappearing. "I know you filed that complaint. I know you posted that review. You're trying to destroy my business." "Your business?" I asked, letting the words hang in the air. "Yes, my business," she snapped, "the one I saved from your daughter's incompetence." The lawyer opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. "Mr. Patterson, you're looking at a harassment claim," the lawyer said. "Intentional interference with business and defamation. Miss Foster is prepared to file." I laughed. I couldn't help it. Aura's eyes narrowed. "You think this is funny?" she hissed. "I think you came into my home to threaten me," I said. I picked up the partnership documents and held them up. "Want to talk about illegal activity? Let's discuss fraud, coercion, and theft by deception." Aura claimed the documents were legitimate, but I had more. The Secretary of State website shows you filed the LLC paperwork 3 weeks before you even talked to Delphine. Premeditation. I said. The lawyer looked at Aura with a confused expression. Miss Foster, you didn't mention this, he said. Because it's lies, she screamed. He's making it up. They're public records, I told her. Anyone can look them up. I told them I'd already sent screenshots to my son and a lawyer friend just in case something happened to me. The room went dead quiet. Aura stared at me with pure hatred. Then her phone rang. Her expression shifted from anger to alarm as she listened. What? She asked. When? How many? She hung up and looked at me. Someone just posted photos on Facebook, she whispered. The health inspection, the violations, the fine, she said. It's in the Portland Foodies group with 12,000 members. They're destroying us. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was cheering. Stage 2 had started on its own. Aura grabbed her purse and marched to the door. This isn't over, she spat. No, I agreed, it isn't. But that Google review is the least of your problems, Aura. You started a war with someone who spent 35 years shutting down people like you. I'm just getting started. She left with her lawyer scrambling after her. I leaned against the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I stood there with my back against the door for a long time. Stage 1 had worked better than I could have dreamed. The inspection was a hit, and the Facebook post was going viral. But Aura wasn't backing down. She was escalating, and I still didn't know who had posted those photos. Someone else was in this game. I poured another drink and actually swallowed this one. I heard voices in the hallway and peered out my door. Aura's lawyer was waiting for the elevator, and Aura was standing apart from him, pulling out her cell phone. Hallway acoustics are funny things. Her voice carried right to me. No, don't worry about Patterson, she said into the phone. He's made his little complaint and feels powerful, but the transfer documents are almost complete. 1 more month and Morning Brew will be entirely mine, legally and permanently. My breath stopped in my throat. His daughter signed everything we need, Aura continued. She was so desperate to save the partnership. The stupid girl doesn't realize she signed away full ownership. 51% was just the first step. The elevator dinged, and Aura kept talking as she stepped inside. By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late to challenge, she said. Send the final papers next week. The doors closed, and her voice was cut off. I stood frozen in the doorway. It wasn't just 51%. It was 100%. Complete theft of my $85,000 and my daughter's entire dream. It would all be gone in 30 days. I walked back inside with shaking hands and found a business card in my address book. Fern Rodriguez, a business attorney I'd met years ago. I dialed the number, and she picked up. This is Fern Rodriguez, she said. I told her my name and that we'd met at my daughter's cafe. I need an emergency meeting, I said. My daughter is being defrauded, and we have 30 days to stop it. There was a pause on the other end. The cafe with the cinnamon rolls, she asked. Yes, I said. What kind of fraud? I told her someone was trying to steal the business through forged or coerced documents. Mr. Patterson, I can meet you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., she said. Bring every document you have. She warned me that if this was what I said it was, we had very limited time. Oregon has strict statutes on partnership agreements. Once they're processed, they are extremely difficult to challenge. I told her I understood, but she pushed back. Proving fraud requires evidence, she said. Do you have that? I thought about the texts and the call I'd just overheard. I have some evidence, I said, and I have 30 days to get more. Then that's what we'll do, she replied. I looked at my apartment. My kitchen table looked like a conspiracy theorist's workspace. I texted Delphine to ask if she was okay and told her about the meeting with the lawyer. I told her things were going to get worse before they got better. Do you trust me? I asked. The 3 dots of her typing appeared, and then she replied, I trust you always. I stared at those words for a long time. I opened my laptop and started an evidence log. I wrote down everything I'd overheard, including the verbatim quotes. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Stage 2 was about to begin, and this time it was about the law. I needed to catch up fast. 8 a.m. Came too fast. I'd spent the whole night organizing everything. I had printed texts, screenshots, and a timeline of every event. By dawn, The table looked like a crime scene. Fern's office was in a converted warehouse downtown with exposed brick and modern glass. She opened the door herself, coffee in hand. She spread the documents across her conference table like a forensic investigator. "These are thorough," she said. That was lawyer speak for saying whoever did this knew how to screw us over. I'd been handled by a professional. "Can we challenge them?" I asked. "Legally, they're valid," she said. Delphine signed them. They were notarized and filed properly. But she looked up and added a caveat. If she signed under duress or if Aura misrepresented what she was signing, that's actionable. We need evidence. I told her I'd heard Aura admit to the plan on the phone. "Hearsay," Fern said, shaking her head. "It's inadmissible. We need her words recorded. Undeniable." Oregon is a one-party consent state, I noted. Fern's eyebrows rose. "You've been researching," she said. "I spent 35 years as an inspector," I told her. "I know the laws. If Delphine records the conversations she's part of, it's legal evidence," I said. Fern smiled. "Exactly. We need Delphine to provoke Aura into admitting the fraud on record. I told her Delphine would do it." "Are you sure?" Fern asked. "Because if Aura discovers the recorder, it could be bad. I told her my daughter had spent months being humiliated, and she was ready. I called Dewey again and asked for tech help. I needed something discreet and legal. He told me his nephew, Oliver, was an IT security specialist and could help. I met Oliver at a coffee shop 3 hours later. He was 24 and wearing a hoodie, carrying a laptop bag. He pulled out a small Sony device. "It looks like a cafe order tracker," he said. "It clips to an apron and has 44 hours of recording time. It's voice-activated." I took it and asked if it was legal. He assured me that as long as Delphine was part of the conversation, it was totally fine. "What if she finds it?" I asked. Oliver grinned. "Worst case, your daughter says it's for tracking orders. Young people are so easy to please when you give them a gadget to explain." That afternoon, I created an anonymous encrypted email account. I wrote to a local food blogger named Octavia Pierce. I told her I was writing anonymously because I feared retaliation. I told her the story of Morning Brew and how the owner was being exploited by her mother-in-law. I mentioned the health inspection and the public humiliation. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. 3 days crawled by while Delphine wore the recorder on her apron. She captured hours of Aura's demeaning commands and cutting remarks. It was a clear pattern of abuse. On day 4, during a slow period, Travis left for a meeting. Aura was at the register, and Delphine approached her with the recorder active. "Aura, can I ask you something?" she asked. Aura didn't even look up. "What?" she snapped. "I've been thinking about the partnership," Delphine said. "Will the cafe ever really be mine again?" Aura paused and looked up, looking amused. "Yours?" she laughed. "Sweetie, when was it ever yours? Your father threw away his retirement on a business you couldn't manage. I salvaged it. This place works because of me. But legally, I still own part of it, right?" Delphine pushed. Aura laughed, a cold and hollow sound. "Legally, stupid girl. This cafe is already mine. The papers you signed transfer full ownership. Your father just doesn't know it yet. Another month and it's final. You'll be an employee if I'm generous enough to keep you." There was silence on the recording. Delphine was genuinely shocked. "You signed everything," Aura continued. "Travis made sure of that. You trusted him and you trusted me. That was your mistake. And there's nothing your father can do about it." That evening, we listened to the recording in Fern's office. Me, Delphine, Fern, and Oliver were all there. When the audio hit a gap, Fern's face fell. "It cut out," she said. Oliver examined the device and said the power had been interrupted because the clip loosened. I laughed, feeling slightly hysterical. "Of course it did," I said, "because nothing can go smoothly." Fern cleared her throat and said it was still usable, but a defense attorney could argue that context was missing. We needed more. We always needed more. 2 nights later, Delphine called me late, her voice shaking. "Dad, I heard Travis on the phone with his mother," she said. "He said he chose her over me. I told her to come over immediately." She arrived 30 minutes later with 1 suitcase and red eyes. "He was on the phone with Aura," she whispered. "She was yelling about some food blogger asking questions. Travis kept saying he'd handle it. Then Aura must have called him weak because he told her, "I chose you over her. I'm with you." "I told him to leave," Delphine said. "He chose his mother over his wife. It's that simple." My phone pinged with an email from an address I didn't recognize. It was Octavia Pierce. She said she remembered Delphine and her cinnamon rolls. She'd done some digging and knew something was wrong. She wanted to hear Delphine's side for an article publishing in 3 days. I told Delphine that a food blogger wanted to help. "Will it help?" she asked. "It'll make that health inspection look like a parking ticket," I told her. She almost smiled. We were building a case piece by piece. Stage 2 was in motion, and Stage 3 was coming in 72 hours. I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Aura thought she'd won, but she was about to learn what happens when you underestimate a father. The morning the article went live, the air in my apartment felt electric. Octavia Pierce had released her piece at 6 a.m. sharp. By the time Delphine and I finished our first pot of coffee, the story had been shared over 800 times. The headline was a punch to the gut. "The Dark Side of Morning Brew, a story of financial abuse and family exploitation." Delphine had chosen to use her real name, standing tall in the face of the storm. "People need to know this is real," she had told me, her voice finally losing that tremor of fear. Internet justice is a fast-moving flood. By noon, the cafe's online presence was a battlefield of one-star reviews. People were sharing stories of seeing Aura scream at Delphine over something as small as a dropped spoon. The hashtags started appearing. "Support Delphine and boycott Morning Brew," my old friend Dewey called, his voice booming with excitement. "It's working, Lem," he said. "Everyone in Portland is talking about this." I told him that was exactly the problem. Aura was backed into a corner, and cornered animals bite hard. Aura tried to fight back with a PR statement from the official cafe account, calling the allegations defamatory and claiming she had saved the business from insolvency. But the public wasn't buying it. The top comments were calling out her gaslighting and accusing her of using burner accounts. Then, a TikTok video surfaced with 120,000 views. It showed Aura red-faced and screaming at Delphine in the middle of the shop. The comments were brutal, mocking her. "I want to speak to the manager" energy when she was the one ruining the place. Just as the momentum felt unstoppable, a shadow fell over us. I received an email from an unknown sender with the subject, "You're passed." My heart hit the floor as I read the words. They knew about my termination from the county health department in 1999. They were demanding $20,000 cash, or they would send a full dossier of my fraudulent career to the Portland Sentinel. I had kept that secret buried for 25 years to protect my family. Delphine saw the color drain from my face and asked what was wrong. I showed her the email. I explained how I had lost my job in 1999 because I stood up for a small family restaurant that was being targeted with discriminatory enforcement. I had gone over my supervisor's head to the commissioner, and they fired me for insubordination. Technically, I had violated impartiality rules because I'd eaten there twice. I had moved my whole life to Oregon to start over because of it. I was terrified Delphine would see me as corrupt, but she surprised me. She put her hand on my shoulder and told me I had sacrificed my job to do the right thing, and I was doing it again now. She told me the email came from a woman who stole from her own family, and that I should tell the whole story first. My phone buzzed with a text from that same unknown number. 48 hours starts now. Pay me or I destroy you both. I looked at my daughter and felt a new kind of strength. We weren't going to pay. We were going to the press. The next morning, I called Marcus Chen at the Portland Sentinel. I told him everything, the truth about 1999 and the blackmail attempt happening right now. I forwarded the extortion texts as proof. Marcus didn't see a scandal. He saw a story about a man with principles. By 2 p.m., the article was live. The inspector's principles. He had even tracked down the owners of the restaurant I defended 25 years ago, and they were still in business and grateful. Aura's blackmail had backfired spectacularly. The Oregon State Bar received a complaint about the extortion attempt. Her lawyer, the third one she'd hired, quit immediately when he learned she might have committed a felony. 2 days later, Fern Rodriguez filed our official lawsuit, Patterson versus Foster. We were suing for fraud, coercion, and theft by deception. The walls were finally closing in on Aura. I saw her one last time before she vanished. I was walking past a Bank of America and saw her at the ATM. She tried to withdraw cash, but the screen kept flashing. Transaction denied. She leaned her forehead against the machine and began to cry. For a split second, I felt pity for this broken woman. But then I remembered Delphine crying on the bathroom floor. I kept walking. That night, Travis sent a text saying they were leaving Portland and that I had won. When we arrived for our court hearing a week later, Aura and Travis were nowhere to be found. They had skipped town in the middle of the night, taking whatever cash they could carry. Neighbors saw them loading suitcases at 2 a.m. Fern secured an emergency order, and we finally went back to Morning Brew to reclaim it. The shop was a ghost town. The registers were empty, the inventory was gone, and the bills were piled high. Aura had left a note taped to the espresso machine. "You ruined everything." The victory felt hollow when we saw the numbers. Aura had left behind $70,000 in liabilities between unpaid suppliers, back rent, and legal fees. With only $30,000 in assets, Delphine was $40,000 in the hole. My son Fletcher stepped up immediately, offering his $40,000 in savings. "We are family," he said, "and we protect each other." But even as we stood in the wreckage, the community began to show up. A woman from a local book club walked in and handed Delphine a check for $800. The support from Portland was unlike anything I'd ever seen. A local plumber came by and offered to do repairs for free. People brought flowers, cash, and gift cards. By the end of that first day back, we had collected $12,000. Fletcher was sharing photos of the community scrubbing floors and painting walls, and the post was blowing up. It felt like Morning Brew was rising from the ashes, but a new complication surfaced. Fern called to tell me that $15,000 of the community donations had been stolen. Aura had returned to the shop at 1 a.m. with her keys and cleaned out the safe. It was a desperate final act of theft. I filed a police report and Detective Morrison issued a warrant. Dewey called with a lead. His friend at airport security saw Aura and Travis board a one-way flight to Las Vegas. We flew out the next day, me, Fletcher, and Delphine. We tracked them to a sun-bleached Motel 6 on the outskirts of the Strip. I knocked on the door of room 128. When Travis opened it, he looked a decade older, unshaven and broken. I pushed my way inside. The room was a mess of empty bottles and fast food wrappers. Aura sat on the bed, her hair tangled, looking small and defeated. I told her that stealing $15,000 in community donations was a new low. She claimed she had panicked, hoping to gamble her way out of the mess she'd made. Aura finally admitted the truth. She had lost everything 10 years ago and saw the cafe as her last chance to be someone again. She had stolen Delphine's dream to rebuild her own. Travis tried to apologize, claiming he was weak and controlled by his mother. Delphine wasn't having it. "You chose her approval over my dignity," she told him. She informed him right then that she was filing for divorce. The Las Vegas police arrived and took Aura away in handcuffs. As the police cruiser pulled away, Travis stood by the motel door, completely alone. Delphine turned her back on him and walked to our rental car without a second glance. We flew back to Portland that night. When we reopened the shop, the debt seemed insurmountable at $23,000. But Portland wasn't finished with us. Octavia Pierce started a GoFundMe that raised $8,000 in 2 hours. Suppliers began donating flour and butter, and local tradespeople volunteered their time. 6 weeks later, Morning Brew officially reopened with a line around the block. Delphine's apple cinnamon pie sold out in 20 minutes. At the sentencing hearing, Aura stood in an orange jumpsuit, finally admitting that she was the villain everyone said she was. She was sentenced to 18 months in jail and ordered to pay $15,000 in restitution. She told Delphine that everything good about the cafe had always been her, not Aura. Delphine walked out of the courtroom without saying a word. Travis eventually sent the divorce papers, signed and uncontested, along with a $5,000 check for child support. He admitted he had been complicit in his mother's cruelty. Delphine deposited the money without a word. Today, Morning Brew is more than a business. It's a staple of the community. I sit in my usual corner every morning with a black coffee and the newspaper. My retirement savings might be gone, but the shop is fully Delphine's. Fletcher calls from Berlin every week, and his photo hangs on the cafe wall next to my old sanitation posters. Octavia Pierce is even writing a book about our story. Delphine is strong now, a survivor who built something beautiful out of the rubble Aura left behind. One Saturday, a customer asked me if all the fighting was worth it. I looked at my daughter behind the counter, laughing with a regular, and I knew the answer. Victory isn't a single moment. It's what you build after the smoke clears. I watched Delphine set a fresh cinnamon roll in front of me, her smile bright and genuine for the first time in a year. That smile was the real win. It wasn't the legal judgments or the prison sentences that mattered in the end. It was seeing my daughter free and happy in the space I dreamed for her. I took a deep breath of the mountain air and finally felt at peace. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.